So NATO in Latin means stability. Roger Wicker's here. He's the chairman of the Armed Services Committee. When I talk about NATO at home, I talk, what do we get? Stability is good, don't you think? Being able to travel. Let's see if this is Trump. He would have gladly talked, I'm sure. Okay, so NATO is good because it creates stability. It's better to have partners than it is to go it alone. So when I'm at home, why does it matter what happens in the Mideast? I believe there are people who want to kill us all and change our way of life because they're religious fanatics. You can stop fighting them, but they're not going to stop fighting you. I'd rather keep the fight over there than come to America. I'd rather have partners than go it alone. There are forces in the world that I'd rather have friends help me contain than do it by myself. I want stability. I don't want war. So NATO has stood the test of time. Not one NATO nation has ever been invaded by a nation state. It works. So we're expanding. That's a good thing. We're in good hands with Mark. He's a worthy successor. Mark spoke yesterday. You were excellent. I am so glad you have this job. You've got a real sense of where we need to go. Frustrating for American politicians goes back to Sam Nunn. Sam Nunn, remember Sam Nunn? I would say he's not Donald Trump, but he threatened to withdraw 30,000 troops a year unless NATO hit their target. This goes long and deep in America on both sides of the aisle. We feel like we've done more and you've done less and everybody's under pressure at home. So it's not 2%, it's not 3.5% to me, it's what do we want to achieve? The spending needs to be based on the threat. I think there are a lot of threats that would justify 3.5%. Finally, the American Senate is firmly in NATO's camp. There's an isolationist movement in the Republican Party, and our liberal friends, Bernie Sanders, wanted to cut the military budget yet again. We've dealt with that since the founding of NATO. But NATO, we need it now more than ever. And let me tell you why. Putin would not invade a NATO nation, in my view, because he understands the consequences would be too severe. Do you agree with that? We got to make him believe he's right. Ukraine. 2014, we got it wrong. Everybody who's worried about who Trump's talking to and how he's doing it, what did you do in 2014? 3 things we failed to do in 2014. We should have integrated our economies with Ukraine to give them hope and have a tripwire so it wouldn't happen again. But we didn't do that because we didn't want to provoke Putin. We should have built up the Ukrainian military so it'd been harder to invade. We didn't do that because we didn't want to provoke Putin. And we never told him what happens if you do it again because we didn't want to deal with provoking Putin. Lessons learned. Don't worry about provoking Putin. Worry about stopping Putin. So, 3 things, real quickly. This minerals agreement between the United States and Ukraine is a game changer because President Trump can go to the American people and say Ukraine's not a burden, it's a benefit. They're sitting on top of $1 trillion worth of minerals that all of us can benefit from by aligning with the West. I told President Trump, it may be the old Soviet Union, it may be the Russian Empire, but I do know he's going after the money. Don't let him steal what Ukraine has to enrich himself, because that's like defunding the police. So if this minerals agreement happens, it's a nightmare for Putin because we have something to defend that we didn't have before. So you better be pulling for this minerals agreement. Number 2, if we don't arm Ukraine to the fullest extent possible, shame on all of us. They need more F-16s, not less, and we make them in South Carolina. And all of us are going to help them buy this stuff because they don't have enough money themselves to have a like 1.3 million person army. But we'd be stupid in the next decade not to create the most lethal Ukrainian army possible as a form of deterrence. And finally, NATO. I'm all for Ukraine being in NATO, but it's up to the members of NATO. I don't want to take off their potential of getting into NATO, but I'm not so sure the market will bear they go into NATO right now. I'm just being honest with you. But here's what I think we could sell. If you ever do this again, Putin, if you ever have a military incursion into Ukraine again, that will trigger automatic admission into NATO by Ukraine. We should have done that in 2014. How many of you believe if that had been in place in 2014, Putin wouldn't have invaded? I don't think he would have if he knows that would put him in NATO. So thanks for having me.
Great.
What I like most is that Europe never criticizes Trump. What you need to get Fox. So the point he's trying to make is that if you were at this conference this weekend, you thought it was Trump's fault that Ukraine got invaded. No. When he was president, they didn't get invaded because Putin's scared of Trump. That's a good thing. I think what JD is trying to tell folks here is that you need to understand Germany's going to have an election. There's going to be a pushback in Germany about out-of-control migration. The AfD, making them go away is not the answer. Dealing with their underlying problem is probably the answer. Brexit. How did that happen? Too much. People feel like too much. Our society's changing too fast in all the wrong ways. I think that's something you need to hear from America. And I'm glad he said it. Now, as to Ukraine, the most important decision we will make as a group is how this war ends. Do you agree with that? If we don't get this right, there goes Taiwan. Question, should Japan be in NATO? Should South Korea be in NATO? Think about it. If we don't get it right, there goes Taiwan. If we get it right, we can reset and make the world a more stable place. Trump's the best person I know of to get it right because Putin's afraid of it. In 2008, Georgia, 2014, Ukraine, 4 years of Trump, nothing to Trump. You didn't start this war, but you got to end it. And you better end it well because it will be your legacy. And here's how to end it well. Not to humiliate Putin, but to make sure it never happens again. Integrate our economies. I urge you to do a mineral agreement with Ukraine so we'll have something of value and defend so the American people understand why Ukraine's important beyond just an idea. I'd urge you, Mr. President, in the next decade, sell them all the weapons they need, made in America, good for us, good for them, to make them so strong nobody in their right mind would do this again. I would urge you, Mr. President, if we can't reach consensus on NATO now, that we put on the table, Putin, if you don't want Ukraine in NATO, don't invade them. Because if you invade them, they're going into NATO. And if President Trump said that, it would be earth-shattering. So we got a chance here to end this war in a fashion to deter future aggression, because Xi will get away with as much as he can, as long as he can. And NATO needs to be thinking about what role should we play in Asia, if any. You've opened up an office. But I am worried that if we don't get Ukraine right, there goes Taiwan. I think if we get Ukraine right, that's the biggest thing we could do to help Taiwan of anything else. If we spend more now on the mutual defense of NATO nations, that will be seen by Xi as a warning sign that we're not going to take it anymore. I'm tired of worrying about being provocative to bad guys. I want them to fear us. If you don't fear Donald Trump, you're a little bit crazy.